the ruins, the ruins of Windsor. And I suspect that this story is based, and Jessica is going to show us a picture of Eudora and friends at the ruins of Windsor. It's probably partly inspired by a visit to these ruins, although Windsor has not 6 Corinthian columns, but 6 Doric columns, but 23 Corinthian columns. It was a house built between 1859 and 1861, just about 10 miles outside of Port Gibson, Mississippi, and plantation house. It burned in 1890 when a guest in the house up on the 3rd floor dropped a cigarette or a cigar into some debris that repairmen had left there. And so it had burned down as Asphodel burns down. On my trip there, sort of like Eudora and her friends, and I think that, I'm not sure, I think that may be Hubert. I know it's Eileen McGrath, and I think it was done, that picture, although it's dated on the photograph 1954, I think it was taken early in 1941, about the time Eudora was working on Asphodel. I can't swear to it, so don't quote me on that, but I think it was. My own trip there, I had a group of people who, it was a class, but everyone in the class was about my age, and we all went out to Windsor together, and we took a picnic out there, and one of our group brought blackberry cordial. So we had a fine time in the spirit of Phoebe and Cora and Irene. Okay, so let's talk about this story, and I like to start with the title. The house is named, Mr. Don McInnes's house is named Asphodel, and the story title is Asphodel. So does anyone want to speculate as to the reason for this, for naming the house Asphodel, a reason for naming the story Asphodel? First thing we see. Okay. So who do we have here?
We have Beverly and then someone named E. Rose.
E. Rose, what is your first name? Oops.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, my first name is Kathy.
Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Okay, so we have Beverly and then Kathy. We're on a first name basis here. I hope that's
Okay.
And then John. Go, Beverly.
Well, actually, my hand was just still up there for my comment about John Murrell, but I think that, you know, the tie, the mythological tie into Asphodel Meadows and Welty's use of mythology, and, you know, we go over the bridge, over the river Styx and all that kind of thing. I think it's not unintentional that she picked Asphodel for this particular story.
So Asphodel is a part of the Elysian fields of a lily's field of asphodels is part of the Elysian fields. This part of the afterlife reserved for gods and nobles, and these flowers. The flowers, by the way, are sacred to Persephone, and Persephone, we know, was abducted by Hades, and then her mother Demeter searched for her and despaired of finding her, and then she learned that Zeus had conspired in her daughter's abduction, she was furious, and so she wouldn't let the earth bring forth fruits until her daughter was returned to her. And Zeus consented that her daughter would be returned, but because Persephone had tasted of the food of Hades, that is pomegranate seeds, which you see the women and have their lips stained with pomegranate, she was forced to spend part of the year with her husband in the underworld, and then her annual return coincided with spring, her return to the underworld with winter. So we have all of these associations with the story, and Welty playing on those. Now I'll let you all speculate about that. Okay, Kathy, and then John, and then
Liz.
Liz.
Okay, I looked up asphodel, and what I found was peace after death. And I thought that that was very apropos because the main character didn't seem to have any peace in her life. And her husband left and went to asphodel, and asphodel was finally ruined. I also noted that asphodel are flowers that are traditional at funerals. So just all of that swirling around made me think about the fact that it must mean something.
All right, thank you, Kathy. John?
There, hey, I think that my impression about asphodel is that it's a wonderful companion piece to a still moment. And they're both about the time, and they're both about the cosmos, and they have different views. And thinking about that made me think that maybe the first two stories we read, what is it?
First Love and the Wide Net.
First Love and the Wide Net are also companion pieces about love. And one in the first set of companion pieces, they go from the past to way in the present. And in this set, we're in the present, or the more recent present, with a Christian-based theology or cosmos that we live in, or that the characters are living in. And then in this one, we back up, and arguably, to me, you could make the case that this is set in the time of Dionysus, and that these three women are the fates, the three fates, and that this moment, or this time that is in this story, is perpetually recurring, and is still with us today, and it's a moment that Eudora Welty created.
I want to come back to the issue of time, John, because I think that's a really important one in this story. But can we finish up before we move to that, talking about the title of the story and the asphodel? Liz? Or if y'all want to leave it, we can leave it, but go ahead, Liz, and then Harriet.
Yeah, the mention of Persephone makes me think, I have a short article that I've contributed to the Eudora Welty Review that's being published this month. And Persephone is the play that she was cast in her year at Camp Nakanoa 100 years ago. And she had the part of an hour, but flowers were very, very important in this play at Camp Nakanoa. So she may have remembered that from that time when she was 13.
Oh, thank you, Liz. I love knowing that. I'd forgotten all about that. I think you told me once before. Yeah. Harriet, you had your hand up, or did you change your mind?
Well, I wasn't going to talk about the title, although I agree with everything you're saying there. I was going to talk about my sense that what Eudora is doing in the story is flirting with us. That this is a companion piece. I was thinking about this as a companion piece, not so much to a still moment as to the wide net, with that sense of three maidens who are vicariously participating in this Gothic sexuality of Miss Sabina and Don McInnes. And it's their or her tender dream and unconscious celebration of the intoxicating golden day that we're out in. I'm thinking about this as an intoxicating, flirtatious literary parody of a familiar genre, that there are lots of allusions circulating, but you don't need a particular specific referent to recognize her playfulness. And I'm thinking about Miss Sabina and the Sabine women, and I'm thinking about Dark House and Jane Eyre, and all those stories that end with the burning of the house, or of Dickens and Great Expectations and Miss Havisham and her wedding dress and her need to avenge the betraying male, and the ways in which that deforms. But at any rate, I love the story, and I feel its playfulness and celebration.
It is playful. I mean, there's a lot of phallic imagery associated with Asphodel, with the house. And these ladies who are old maids, sheltered old maids in Dimity, are certainly fascinated with the sight of this man who's not just naked, he's buck naked. So there's a lot of that going on. Yeah.
Roots that rise up like a snake.
Right, yeah. Those vines, yeah. The columns themselves. Ray, we lost him.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, I lowered my hand. Everybody's already spoken to the points I've been thinking about.
Okay, thank you.
There's also some great comments going on in the chat, so be sure to check those out.
What about Miss Sabina? Okay, so her name, and Harriet pointed us to the myth of the rape of the Sabine women. Why call her Sabina? The rape of the Sabine women is actually was the abduction. So these women were abducted to provide wives for Romans, and the Romans, the Sabine people were instructed to submit, much as Sabina's father instructs her to submit. And so her marriage is a kind of abduction as well, isn't it? What about Miss Sabina? And I want to come back to the ladies who tell her story too. But what can we say about her? Yeah, Jacob.
I think that one thing that's really remarkable about this story, or at least my reading of it, was I noticed, or I'm starting to notice throughout the stories, a kind of a through line of what I would call wildness, a theme of wildness. In this case, Miss Sabina is the unconquerable woman. Though she has gone through a lot, I think she starts fighting against all the constraints put upon her, against her conqueror, her husband. I'm noticing this theme that Welty's playing with an idea of wildness. All the stories undergirded by a wild place, the Natchez Trace, the wildness of a child's first love, the wildness of a marriage. I think she's really playing with this idea, the way characters act. They are very unpredictable. She is a woman full of rage. She's a wild woman. I'll make my claim for her.
On the other thing, I think she's not the Natchez Trace. She is the town. And what she wants is the town to be absolutely predictable. It's predictable because it's going to obey her. And she doesn't want anything. She doesn't want the post office. I want to come back to the post office. She doesn't want the trace. She wants a controlled world. She doesn't want a world where your daughter and your two sons die, drowning, falling off a horse, suicide. She wants a world she can control. I think she doesn't want wildness. I don't know. Although she is filled with rage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ray and then John.
Yes, I agree with that, that you just said. And Miss Sabrina seems to be the anti-sexual to me. Mm-hmm. She gets interrupted by a rude question from Mr. Don. And she's stiff, and her clothes are stiff. So stiff is not the right way to enter the first, or the best way to enter the first night of marriage. And then when she goes by,
go ahead, Ray. Sorry.
When she goes by the maypoles, they become entangled and they don't have their usual function. And then the little basket, see, Miss Sabrina would not have given up the little basket. I take that as a female sexual symbol. So sex and Miss Sabrina don't mix the way I read it.
I think
Though
that's
she did have the 3 children.
But she's also, it's a matter of being compelled into the marriage. She has no choice. It's male dominated. You will marry this man. You will continue the line of our family. This is part of the domination, and she has to submit. And her response to submitting is to becoming a greater tyrant than her father was, in a way. Yeah. John.
Well, this has maybe addresses some of the playfulness and maybe some of the wildness and not submitting. I personally interpret Sabina as an oracle, and that's why she won't answer McInnes's question. She keeps on saying, "What, Miss Sabina?" several times, and she never answers the question. And I think that, and I view McInnes, and again, this is just me, as he's playing the role of Dionysus. And he's demanding of the oracle that she answer this question, and she won't do it. And I just, again, I think it's a remarkable work. And let me say, there's all the allusions to the women, the 3 women, they nearly all are referred to where you could say they're the 3 old women, maidens, gray hair, who are infatuated with cloth. Anytime that clothes are mentioned, they remark about it. They take their turn telling the same story like they've retold it, countless times. But in the end, they, and I don't know when Ms. Welty read The Golden Bough, but, in the end, when they enter Asphodel, they don't go with the Golden Bough, which allows them entry. And so they can get run off by the kids, the goats, and they have to deal with that. I view all that as the ritual, Dionysus, and that, Dionysus is the precursor to an incarnate God who dies and is resurrected.
Let me just say, I think the name McInnes is son of Angus, and I'm reading it son of Ingus, the Irish love god. So in line with you, but I'm seeing Eudora and the Song of the Wandering Ingus coming back up here. Is it coming up here before it comes up in the Golden Apples? Monica. Whoops, we can't hear you, Monica. Not yet.
We can't hear you, Monica, but feel free to type your question in the chat.
Well, maybe she can get on. I would like to hear Monica. I was looking forward to it. No, can't get on. Okay. Jessica will read it from the chat. Okay. Anything else here? Should we look at the description of, well, let's talk about the 3 ladies. And John is referring to them as fates. I see them sort of as a Greek chorus rather than as the fates, but as part of a chorus. And if they are the chorus, why do you think, if you'll humor me and play along with this, why might Welty want to cast them as a chorus? And why is everything they say, as their lips are moving together? One person speaks, but the lips of the other 2 are moving at the same time, so that the story is set. Miss Sabina has died. The ladies have her story. It's set, and they tell it as a chorus until the end. Then I think the chorus breaks apart at the end. But what about that? Anybody want to talk about the effect of the chorus? Why
If
might
no one has that yet, I've got Monica's question,
Oh,
and then we
good.
can come back to the
Yeah.
chorus.
Good.
She's looking at in her copy page 244. It's the passage where she lost her hair, and
Yeah.
then on the following page, when the maypoles become entangled when when Sabine passes it, it seemed very Old Testament to her, like an unclean, powerful woman.
Oh,
Is my
okay.
microphone working?
Yeah, it is. Good.
Yes.
Okay, I just had to leave and come back. No, those two passages like opposite each other. The
Mhm.
fact that it's just an aside that she lost her hair in some sort of either illness or violence seemed a really dramatic
And she's-
detail to
and she's
me.
wearing a big
A
wig.
giant black wig.
Yeah.
And then the next page when it says at the May Festival, when she passed, all the maypoles became hopelessly tangled one by one. I mean, that to me just
Yeah.
seemed, like I said, it was my first thought was Old Testament unclean woman. The fields will, fail if an unclean woman walks by. So those two details opposite each other really struck me this time.
Yeah, there is a kind of, yeah, when she dies, her wig falls off and her face looks mask-like. It's as if she's sort of in disguise almost.
And women's hair is so important.
Yeah, and the old ladies, their gray hair, scant gray hair comes loose. Yeah. Pearl? Can't hear you, Pearl.
So that's absolutely a Medusa figure right there. Both, her mask-like face, the tangled webs, the hair, that's all Medusa, and things. She freezes things. She holds things.
Yeah.
She holds things in that frozen state. But I do love these three ladies. Irene also means goddess of peace.
Mhm.
How they speak with one voice of their lips, because they're telling this story from their point of view the day after the burial. So they are basically released. They go back and they review their whole lives through this one gorgeous picnic. And I love that phrase, I think I put in the chat, the narrow maiden feet, which emphasizes that they had not been married, they had not borne children, their feet had not gotten wider and flatter from the childbearing. So there's perfect little details that Welty puts in there. And of course, as soon as you get the post office, I have to think of Lily Daw and the three ladies, where you have three other ladies who are controlling the town, trying to manipulate no, they are manipulating, but I don't think these three ladies are manipulating so much, but I just had to say that's perfect, Monica.
Yeah, I want to come back to that. But for now, let's think about these. They go out to Asphodel and they say the name Don McInnes, both of which they're forbidden by Sabina from doing. So they're free. And they have led these sheltered lives, and they are fascinated by the kind of sensual experience. They're out there with the grapes and the blackberry cordial and the pomegranates, and they see the naked man, and they're breaking out of this kind of constrained life that they've been leading, or they're trying to anyway. They get scared off by the goats that chase them, but there's that.
They're barefoot as they walk through the stream,
Yeah.
and then leave their shoes. They cross over the river Styx or Lethe or whatever
Yeah.
world.
Jo Ellen and then Harriet.
The more I look at this story and think about it, the more active I think those three women are. They're like passive aggressive pot stirrers in my mind right now. They're the ones who went and told Sabina about maybe one affair.
Yeah.
That they
Maybe
exaggerate.
always, maybe once, yeah.
Well, they set up all kinds of things,
Yeah.
like they're projecting their fantasy life onto Sabina. And given that kind of reading, they would love seeing a woman in power. They don't do anything. I mean, they're the ones who are always going up, watching the fire. I mean, I'm not going so far as to suggesting they set the fire, but as soon as Sabina's out of the way, they do go looking for trouble. They go to Asphodel, they have their picnic. I think they love drama.
Yeah, they're real busybodies. They don't have to tell Sabina that her husband's unfaithful, but they remarks to themselves right over there and do it. And yeah, so I think you're right. They're sort of projecting
Yes.
Harriet and then Jacob.
So, yeah, I was going to say something similar, you know, the way in which they are, they're the drivers of the story. They're the agents as well as the tellers.
Yeah.
And they are, and there's this slippage in the playfulness between Dionysian sexuality and connected with the women and with the tellers, and they're unfolding this celebration for themselves in their picnic. But it slips into, as Welty often does. I'm thinking about the wide net and slipping from heroic epic into something like female pastoral, where the genre changes. We slip into Gothic novel and dark house and that other kind of sexuality, which is Miss Sabina's story, and as it usually is, it's deforming. You're talking about her Medusa hair and her wig and her the horror of her rule.
Yeah, I've read that too. As the deformity, the sickness is what's happened to her. It's the darkness of this experience. But she's a victim, but she's also a victimizer, as the Medusa is in the Golden Apples. Jacob and then Ray.
Okay, here's some more pot stirring.
Yeah.
Unless I didn't recognize it, who is the other woman that McInnes is known for running off with? At the bottom of page 245, all we find out is that Miss Sabina confronts him and kicks him out of the house, and she starts cracking her whip, and she says the story reads, she longed, or she called at the top of her voice for the woman to come forward. She longed to whip her there and then, but no one came forward. Who is the woman? Is it possible? Is it any of the three ladies at the end? I mean, did I miss something? Or
if it is one of the three ladies, she's ratted herself out.
Right. I mean, there's some bizarre, we're missing a clue here.
Yeah, she's unnamed. Yeah. And Sabina's house is unnamed. Don McInnes's house is named. So, Ray.
Well, I'm thinking the way Jacob is thinking, and there are multiple references to Don McInnes being an attractive guy, and none of them got him. Mm-hmm. And particularly Phoebe is that way. So maybe it was spite.
Yeah, they say they worship him, but Sabina has gotten him, so they were left to worship him. Yeah. That's
right.
Yeah. Pearl, did you want to say something? Do I see you poised to speak? No?
Beverly's got her hand up too.
Beverly. Okay, go.
I was reminded, as I'm sure other people were too, of A Rose for Emily. We have that same kind of little old lady frozen in Southern time who has been thwarted in love. Of course, Miss Emily did not marry Homer Barron, but he ruined her nevertheless. And of course, froze her life, and she managed to control everybody else from that point. When people came to take her father's body away, she didn't, she wouldn't let them have him. She stood down when she bought the arsenic to probably kill Homer Barron. She refused to go through the regular motions, and nobody made her. And just like that, Miss Sabina is controlling everybody, and nobody's making her behave. I mean, nobody is saying to her, you're not my mama, or you're not my grandmama, or you're not the boss of me, like my granddaughter said at one point. And so I think we have this character. It's not a caricature, because I think there are a lot of Southern women in literature like her. And of course, Miss Emily ends badly, as does Miss Sabina. So I was reminded as I was reading along again of Faulkner's Rose for Emily, which is a wonderful story as well.
Homer Barron is dead, but Don McInnes probably isn't. I didn't, yeah. But Miss Sabina's been in bed with him. I mean, Miss Emily's been in bed with him. So there, John.
Is that me? The,
Yeah.
am I off mute?
You're off mute. Yeah.
Okay, but this is related to.
On center, but off mute.
Okay, this is related to one thing that Joe Ellen said about the three women intermeddling. And it's also related to Jacob's question. The woman may have never existed. There are repeated instances in Greek myth of women being, people being phantoms.
Mm.
And that there's a whole dichotomy, or there's a whole line of thought that Helen of Troy was a phantom.
Well,
And
it's certainly, the woman could have been a figment of Cora and Phoebe and Irene's imagination as well. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, but, and that we go through life based on these preconceived notions and assumptions. And one thing you remind, you know, when you.
It was fake news.
Pardon?
Maybe it was just fake news.
Yeah.
I want to point out at the end of the story, I just wanted to look at how the three break up. They've been the chorus united in their accounts, but at the end, we escaped, said Cora. I am thankful Miss Sabina did not live to see us end, said Irene. She would have been ashamed of us, barefooted and running. She would never have given up the little basket we had saved back. It was a hen in that basket, by the way. He ought not to be left at liberty, cried Cora. She spoke soothingly to the old horse, whose haunches still trembled, and then said, I have a good mind to report him to the law. There was the great house where Miss Sabina had lived, high on the coming hill. But Phoebe laughed aloud as they made the curve. Her voice was soft, and she seemed to be still in a tender dream and an unconscious celebration, as though the picnic were not already set rudely in the past, but were the enduring and intoxicating present, still the phenomenon, the golden day. And I was thinking of at the end of One Writer's Beginnings, when Eudora says, get the line, the memory is a living thing. It too is in transit. And they've had the memory as a set thing, not in transit, but all of a sudden, this experience has opened up the memory to be something that is in transit and alive. And so maybe their lives have been changed for the better by this trip out here to the ruins.
A lot of people in the chat are talking about the pomegranate stained lips.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
looks like Pearl has her hand up too.
Okay, Pearl.
I love you reading that last passage, and it makes me think that we really need to go back and see which part of the story is told by each one of the characters. Why is it Phoebe who laughs? You know, why is it Cora that does certain things? So in thinking them as the chorus, but then reversing that and thinking them as individuals might show us something else.
Yeah, I started doing that, Pearl, and I was putting it in the margin of my book, but I didn't finish it in time for class. Right? Helen.
Oh, I have a drawing of Miss Sabina. I thought you might like to see it if I can hold it up.
Right.
Oh, where you can get it. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, she's really buttoned up there. All right, I just thought that might add a little to your imagination.
Thank you.
I don't know who the artist is. It's in the Franklin Mint collection.
Ray and then Pearl.
I'm done.
Okay.
Back to the ending, I still am very impressed by what I take is getting in touch with the love and the attraction to this virile man. He might be trouble, but he is virile. And she seems she's in intoxication. She has a tender dream. And that tells me that she still has a thing for Mr. Don.
Yeah, and I think he is dangerous, but he's also attractive.
Yes.
Harriet?
Yeah, I've been working on and off with the idea of the homme fatale in Welty's work. And I see the white suit and I think over to King McLean and these guys who are trouble and attractive and dangerous that flit through the canon of her work.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, he's the forerunner of King McLean, and I think he is associated with Ingus here pretty clearly. So,
and there are other foreshadowings. Like I think about her, Miss Sabina eating the letters, and Miss Julia when words are good enough to eat, when she is dipping her pen into her mouth as she scrawls those letters. That there you hear echoes throughout Welty's work that go forward and backward.
should we look at the post office scene? Shall I read that and we'll talk about that? In the Library of America, it's on 248. So Miss Sabina enters the post office. Give me my letter. And Miss Sabina never got a letter in her life. She never knew a soul beyond the town. We told her there was no letter for her, but she cried out again, give me my letter. We told her there was none, and we went closer and tried to gather her to us, but she said, give me that. And she took our letters out of our hands. Your lovers, she said, and tore them in two. We let her do just as she would, but she was not satisfied. Open up, she said to the postmistress, and she beat upon the little communicating door. So the postmistress had to open up, and Miss Sabina went into the inner part. We all drew close. We glanced at one another with our eyes grown bright, like people under a spell, for she was bent upon destruction. A fury and a pleasure seemed to rise inside her that went out like lightning through her hands, said Cora. She threw down her stick. She advanced with bare hands. She seized upon everything before her and tore it to pieces. She dragged the sacks about and the wastebaskets, and the contents she scattered like snow. Even the ink pad she flung against the wall, and it left a purple mark like a grape stain that will never wear off. She was possessed then before our eyes as she could never have been possessed. She raged, she rocked from side to side, she danced. Miss Sabina's arm moved like a harvester's in the field to destroy all that was in the little room. In her frenzy, she tore up all the letters to pieces and even put bits in her mouth and appeared to eat them. Then she stood still in the little room. She had finished. We had not yet moved when she lay toppled on the floor, her wig fallen from her head, her face awry like a mask. A stroke. That is what we said, because we did not know how to put a name to the end of her life. So here is that right at the heart of the story. What do you make of this passage? What do you have to say about it? Why the post office? The one place she doesn't control.
Marcia Huff had a good comment in the chat that the post office represents community, and that Sabina is enraged that she neither participates in that community or controls it.
Right. She thinks she controls it. She doesn't control the PO, right? Anything else? The post office. I like Pearl's suggestion of Lily Daw, and then of course there's why I live at the PO. There are lots of post offices. Harriet, I was looking for, I thought that Donnie and Kevin had written an article about post offices, but I didn't find it.
They have, and it's coming out. Do I know where? I don't. Pearl, is it the Journal? Is it? I don't know where. I don't know where it's coming out. But I thought I wanted to hear from them again, and went looking for it too.
Yeah. So there is an article about Welty and post offices due out. We can see if we can intuit what they have to say. Yeah. Cheryl,
Cheryl.
welcome in the car.
Hi, everyone. So it's really not a comment that's going to add to the conversation, but with this collection of stories having been published 80 years ago, I understand what a post office is. I'm old enough to have sent mail, but I don't understand if she's never received a letter, what prompted her to go to the post office on this particular day. And how important was the post office to the community as a whole. It's just, I guess I'm commenting on how the generational time difference makes the point of this less clear to me.
Yeah, certainly the post office was a far more important part of the community then than now, where we're on email. And when my mail, I still look forward to getting my mail every day, but I rarely get a piece of first-class mail. It's all junk. So, and Amazon.com, I do get that. I look forward to that. So what about the post office in the community? The post office, I think, is the realm separate. It's part of the community. It's where the community members gather. But it's not under her control the way other things are. Why not? Why is it not under her
Cindy
control?
Lyons in the chat was making the comment that the post office is the one place that connects to the outside world.
Yeah, I think that's right, Cindy. It's the outside world here. Something coming in from the outside, you can send something out to the outside. It's in a sealed envelope. Miss Sabina doesn't control the communication. It's written rather than oral. And she wants to control the world, and this is the part where she can't, because it's the outside world has access here, and it makes life more threatening, but also more interesting. Yeah, Ray and Harriet and Pearl.
It's also under the control of the federal government.
Yeah.
It's not a local thing. So that's a big difference.
Now, we know that Sister got to be the head of the post office because of Papa Daddy had political influence, but we don't know how this postmaster's got her job, but she would have been appointed by someone who had political influence. And Miss Sabina finally breaks down the door into the interior of the post office, but you're right, this is a federal undertaking here. Yeah. Harriet and then Pearl.
It does just keep coming back. I mean, I think about remembering ladies in spring and Miss Hattie is postmistress.
Yeah.
And Welty's first novel, her early novel, which is an unpublished and largely lost work, has post office as central to it. It's just it's a signifier that we're working on. Yeah.
Yeah, and Miss Hattie, they have to hang the mail up as way so the train comes through town and grabs the mail off the hook in the bag, and so it's part of that transfer between communities as well. Pearl and then Helen and then John.
I think it's a really important question that I hadn't considered about why this day. What is the catalyst for severe change in Miss Sabina's behavior? Because before we get to that scene, we are reminded by the ladies over on page 246 at the bottom, her power reached over the whole population, white and black, men and women, children, idiots, animals, even strangers. Her law was laid over us. Her riches were distributed upon us. We were given a museum, a statue, a waterworks. I love that. But then as the description goes on 248, and you read this part, I think it was as if the place of the smallest and the longest permitted indulgence, the little common green, were to be invaded when the time came for the tyrant to die. So this goes back to all the myth, I think, of the story, that there, and maybe John's idea of the oracle, there's a moment when she's going to die. And so she gets a stage. She comes down from the hill, from the big house that has controlled and looked over the town, down to that little common green space. I think it's such a brilliant story, like everything.
There's also this line, Pearl. All the hate she had left in her when she was old went out to the little four-posted whitewashed building, the post office. It was beyond her domain. For there we might still be apart in a dream, and she did not know what it was.
It's a season of dreams.
Yeah. Helen, and then John Browning, and then Harriet.
I just wanted
John
to
Hennig.
add,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that the post office was the most likely place to run into Eudora in the back of the drugstore next door to the jitney. And even though I didn't live in Jackson when I visited, that happened several times, and I've thought of it often. Is the jitney and the post office still, are they still standing?
Oh, now that post office was in Parkins Drugstore, and they've kept the post office sign, but it's over the bar now. Another place of communication. Yeah.
Well, she dropped in often.
Yeah. John Browning, and then John Hennigan. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of the post office here as a portal between worlds.
Mhm.
And in this case, it's like the portal or the anteroom to Hades. Sabina goes in there and dies. She enters Hades. So it's really kind of a profound portal.
I love the idea of a portal. Yeah. John Hennigan, and then Harriet.
This is not an answer to your questions as much as she said when she enters the post office, she says, "Give me my letter."
Yeah.
And so I guess my question is, what letter does she think she's going to get? Even if she's never written anybody, she's so convinced that there's a letter for her, and the absence of the letter in the scene to me seems to be that it drives her crazy, and there is no letter for her for whatever question, and so it makes me wonder if she has asked a question of somebody that she herself, because she can't answer the question.
Harriet, you have an answer for that? I also want to talk about why she eats these letters.
No, I don't know that I have an answer. I mean, I would say that there's a stage quality as well as a portal quality to the post office, and there's the need to in that novel, the character goes looking for a letter that she expects to receive. I mean, there's the expectation of communication that doesn't come. And I'm thinking about that too with Miss Lexi and Julia Renfro.
Mhm.
But I really, the reason I put my hand up was to share a bit of Welty trivia and tell you. And if you may know this story, but the early email program Eudora was in fact named for Why I Live at the Post Office. And years ago, the fellow who started that program contacted me to tell me about his appreciation of Eudora Welty and send me some T-shirts that advertise the email program.
I'd like one of those shirts. Could you send it on? I'll look for my letter. Ray?
Oh, Suzanne, I wanted to return to a question you threw out last time, which how does this story comport with Robert Penn Warren's 1944 essay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same point that we've talked about before, which is a dreamlike kind of quality and a skewing of logic. So I went back and found all the references to dream and unconscious thought and return from the past to the present. And there are 10 of those. I won't list them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same kind of effect. But I must say not nearly as much as First Love and Joel Mays and the Three Men in a Still Moment. Not nearly as much as that, but still there in a pretty robust way.
You think that when she eats those letters, is she trying to sort of consume the post office to make it her own? Jacob, what do you think? And talk about what you want to talk about.
I was just going to add to his points to just ask this question because I'm not fully settled on it. Why, and this maybe goes to Pearl as well, why are these women honoring her? I mean, what we've learned from the past, she's this raging, aggressive bully of a woman. So why does the ending sound so happy?
Because they are free of her.
Yeah. I mean, but with that being said, I would also add that one great quality of Miss Sabina is that she has a story, a beginning and an end. I think we hear that description that she is compiled in a kind of mythic celebration of this awful woman that makes all these other women feel something, like they miss her in a way. Like, you've been around awful people and you kind of look back and go, oh, but boy, I'll never forget her.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. Joe Ellen? What? We're not hearing you.
Sorry, I was just thinking a little while ago about why the post office, and remember I think it's just the page before or something, where it says that Miss Sabina prophesied all the things beforehand with the devotion of a priestess. I don't know, maybe she knew she was dying, choosing that place or whatever, but I love it because, and I like the idea of the portal, but as soon as we're told she had a stroke, in the very next paragraph, we're told that the three women were telling an old story. It's like it was stamped, sealed, and delivered, closed and complete. In some intoxication of the time and place, they recited it and came to the end. And in the last paragraph, I love, Ray, I think, brought up the unconscious. They are part of an unconscious celebration. And it's Phoebe. Once they know Don McInnes is alive, is that, I don't remember when she's chewing on the juicy green leaf, but she laughs. The only other laugh we've been told about with Don McInnes is on his wedding night. It's like she answers him or something.
His laugh is like a rage. Both of them, they're raging. Yeah. Cheryl and then Harriet.
Okay. The purple stain, the purple ink against the wall of the post office versus the imagery of the three women eating and indulging on their feast of grapes and other fruit, the blackberries. That's something that sticks with me. Also, Sabine's forced marriage prompts me to think of Judith Sutton's forced marriage in Absalom, and then thinking about Sabina eating some of the letters is resonating with me. Two things. Sylvia Plath, I don't have the text, but in Lady Lazarus, she says something like, I rise up and I eat men like air, or I eat words like air. I don't remember the exact line. But then also Addie Bundren, and As I Lay Dying, as she's thinking about the meaninglessness of her husband's words. And she also says something about eating or consuming his words.
Thank you. Harriet?
I was thinking about how often the post office scenes are desperate. That I'm thinking there's quality and say, why are they with the PO of being desperate to tell the story that's going to reach the audience, that's going to persuade them. I'm thinking about the idea here, it's like eating other people's voices as she eats the letters. I mean, sometimes it's a desperation to communicate, like in Miss Julia, but here it's
the opposite.
Following those other voices. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think it's important what Cheryl was saying. She is a victim. I mean, she has been forced into this marriage, but on the other hand, she has become this horrible tyrant who, by the force of will and by the force of class, I think, and her family's position in the town, in the big house, tyrannizes the community. Jacob.
Just to, go back to the notion of love and separateness, another important theme. What's a better scenario for love and separateness than marriage? That she is brought into this loving union and only feels throughout it much of her separateness.
No. I want to let me give you anyone else a chance to bring up anything they want to before I have one last question, which is off on a tangent, so you'll be humoring me. So you all keep us on track if you would like to. Pearl.
What about the goats? Let's start. You have to say something about the goats. And
Yeah,
thrown out at the end.
The sexual experience, I think, those goats running after them, and what gets thrown to the goats. The biscuits don't stop them. It's a hen, and there's this kind of right out of Greek mythology, I would say too. Did you want to say something else besides that, Pearl?
No, I think that's good. I mean, there was the one comment that no, it's not Don McGinnis, it's a goat.
Yeah.
And the goats act like Don McGinnis and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
Lion.
When I was, I'm going to go back to a still moment. When I was teaching a still moment a long time ago, before my husband died, and we were driving, and I was reading the car, studying while he was driving, and he said, well, just read it out loud. So I read a still moment out loud to him. And when we got to the scene where all the people are bowing, Merle imagines all the people bowing down to him, Roanne said, well, that reminds me of A Triumph of the Will, the Leni Riefenstahl movie, which was made in 1935, part of Hitler propaganda machine. And Merle as the sort of tyrant. And here's the story written early, and while the war is raging in Europe, before it started here, and then so is Asphodel, and they're both stories about tyranny in a way, that what the nature of the tyrant and the importance of resisting the tyrant. And I think there are also stories about this story is a story about controlling the narrative, and that's what Miss Sabina wants to do. She wants to tell people name the children, predict the births, predict the deaths, control the narrative. And it's fixed and set, and the women go along with it. But what happens to them at the end is that fixed and set narrative gets opened up. So I'm seeing this in terms of the time in which the story was written, as well as about all the other things we've been talking about, and not being totally removed, as Eudora was accused of being removed from her context. So what do you think? Am I off on a hobby horse here? Beverly?
I agree, but as you were talking, I was thinking, I wonder which one of those three women is going to be sneaking back to Asphodel to see if they can find Don McGinnis in the flesh.
I have to say,
three.
My favorite line in the whole story is when one says he was naked and the other one says he was buck naked. So, all right. So we have finished our discussion of Asphodel. I think we're ready to go on to another of my favorite stories, The Winds. So we'll do The Winds next time. Give yourself plenty of time to read it, and we'll have a detailed discussion. Anything else? Any last comments?
Pearl? No? Okay.
No? All right. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.